Standard 7th, Subject Civics, Chapter 4, Fundamental Rights, Part 1. Dear students, you must have seen such placards in newspapers and elsewhere. For example, here you can see education is our right. Another placard saying we must get the assurance of a minimum wage. It is our right. And the third placard says, we have a right over a forest and its resources. In a rally or a march, sometimes a certain demand is made asserting it to be their right. So we see such placards, sometimes they are used for passing on knowledge, or sometimes they are used to ask for certain rights and demands. Okay, we get rights at birth. Every newborn baby has a right to live. The entire society and government takes efforts to ensure that the baby is in the best of health. Only when all individuals get protection from injustice, exploitation, discrimination, and deprivation will they be able to develop their skills and qualities. Demanding one's right is insisting on creating an atmosphere conducive to the development of the self as well as the entire society. So that means these rules are not applicable to a certain section but the entire society, the entire nation. The Indian Constitution has guaranteed equal rights to all citizens in order to create this conducive atmosphere. These rights are fundamental rights. As they are included in the Constitution, they have the status of law. It is imperative for everybody to abide by these rights. Now, let us have a look at fundamental rights. Our rights as mentioned in the Constitution. Okay, so the fundamental rights enlisted here are 6 altogether. We shall study the first 3 in this chapter, that is Fundamental Rights Part 1, and the next 3 will be explained to you later in the next chapter, which is Fundamental Rights Part 2. So what are fundamental rights mentioned in our Constitution? First, right to equality. Second, right to freedom. Third, right against exploitation. Fourth, right to freedom of religion. Fifth, cultural and educational rights. And sixth, right to move the court. So now we will study in this chapter, as I mentioned earlier, the first 3 fundamental rights. Let's begin with the first one, right to equality. According to the right to equality, the state cannot discriminate among citizens as high caste or low caste, means as superior, inferior, or as men, women, and cannot give different treatment or privileges to anybody. The same law applies equally to all. Many laws give us protection. So, no matter where you are born, in which family, everyone has the right to equality. For example, we have protection from arrest without warrant. So there are rules and regulations to be followed even by the police department. Also, the state cannot discriminate while extending such protection. So what other things are included in the right to equality? The state cannot discriminate against any citizen on grounds of religion, then on the grounds of caste, as I mentioned earlier, high caste, low caste, doesn't matter, you cannot discriminate. Then on grounds of race, sex, descent, or place of birth or residence for government employment. The inhuman practice of untouchability that was prevalent in our country has been abolished by law. What is untouchability? certain section of society were not allowed to enter a certain premises, and the higher class, as mentioned, that time would not touch them. They were considered to be untouchable. The practice of untouchability in any form is a cognizable offense now. Means you can be punished if you practice such things. This practice has been abolished in order to establish equality in Indian society. The constitution has also abolished titles that create an artificial hierarchy among people. For example, titles like Raja, Maharaja, Rao Bahadur, etc. have been abolished completely. So no longer we see such titles being used. So this is about right to equality, the first right. Now the second one, right to liberty or right to freedom. Liberty means freedom. So what does right to liberty say? This is a very important right given by the Constitution. It gives a guarantee of all the freedoms necessary from the point of view of the individual. So as Indian citizen, we have the right to see, there are altogether 6 freedoms mentioned here. First, freedom of speech and expression. Second, freedom of assembly, that is freedom to assemble peaceably anywhere. Third, freedom of association or to form unions. Freedom of movement, that is to move freely throughout the territory of India. Next, we have freedom of residence, that is the freedom to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India. And last, we have the freedom of profession and trade. That means the freedom to practice any lawful profession or to carry on any occupation, trade, or business of one's choice. So let's study in detail each of these 6 freedoms. So, second fundamental right we are studying is right to freedom. Below right to freedom, we have 6 types of freedoms mentioned here. The first one, freedom of speech and expression. The right to liberty in the Constitution has guaranteed us the freedom of speech and movement, and it has also provided us security to keep us safe. This legal protection has been given to everybody equally. It is not denied to anybody. So we can express through various media like radio, television, internet, newspapers, magazines, etc. Now, we all have a right to life. That means we have the freedom of assembly. It appears to be simple, but it has a deep significance. It implies getting a guarantee to live, availability of a conducive environment for living. Okay, so here you can see in the picture, people are coming together. So there is an assembly of people. So this freedom of assembly is a right. In the right to freedom, freedom of assembly is mentioned. But you should be able to join in peacefully, not by creating any kind of chaos. Then the third freedom, freedom of association. Like we have the ex-student association, any kind of association can be formed. We have it under our fundamental rights, under right to freedom. The fourth one, as I mentioned, freedom of movement, freedom to move to any place throughout the territory of India. You are free to move. Okay, within the territory of India, you can move about. That is the freedom of movement given to us by a constitution. Next, we have freedom of residence. So you can settle down in any part of the territory of India also. And the last freedom is to practice any profession You are not bounded to be a doctor. If your father or mother is a doctor, you can practice your own profession. You want to become a lawyer, you want to become a businessman or businesswoman, yeah, you are free. Or to carry out any occupation, trade, or business of your choice. That is called freedom of profession and trade. Okay, so all these are given to us under the fundamental rights, that is right to liberty, right to freedom. So the right to liberty now also includes the right, another important right, where no person can be deprived of his or her life or freedom except according to the procedure established by law. So freedom of profession and trade is what I explained to you, and so you can accordingly follow your own will for profession or trade, but it should be lawfully done. Now, these are the 6 freedoms that you have studied, okay, under the act of right to freedom. So, our first fundamental right you studied was right to equality. Second, right to freedom. Under right to freedom, there are 6 sub topics which you studied just now. Also, the right to liberty now includes the right to education. All children between 6 and 14 years of age are entitled to get education as a fundamental right. This ensures that no child will be deprived of education. So, all this is covered under right to freedom. And the third one, now that we are studying in this chapter, is right against exploitation. Now, what is right against exploitation? The right against exploitation implies the right to prevent exploitation, not to be harassed by anyone. So, while the Constitution has banned all types of oppression through the right against exploitation, it has made a special provision to prevent the exploitation of children. Accordingly, it is prohibited to employ children under 14 years of age in hazardous places. Hazardous means in dangerous or risky place. Children cannot be employed or made to work in factories and mines. It is against the law. Exploitation includes bonded labor. What is bonded labor? Means forcing somebody to work against his or her wish, treating somebody like a slave, denying them legitimate compensation. Means proper salaries are not paid and they are treated like slaves, making them do strenuous work, okay, means excessive work, starving them or ill treating them. Generally, women, children, the weaker sections of society, and powerless people are exploited. The right, this right, that is the right to exploitation, enables us to stand up against any kind of exploitation. So, in this chapter, we studied the right to equality, right to freedom, that is liberty, and right against exploitation. In the next chapter, we shall study some more fundamental rights in the Constitution. So, hope you have understood this chapter. Do open your textbook and read the chapter for a better understanding. Till then, stay safe, keep learning, and thank you.